Picture Hollywood, 1969. The grand movie palaces of Sunset Boulevard stand nearly empty. Studio lots, once bustling with activity, have fallen silent. The dream factory of America is a nightmare of red ink and bankruptcies. But salvation would come from an unexpected source. The very community Hollywood had spent decades either ignoring or stereotyping. We need to travel back to the golden age of Hollywood. From the 1920s through the 1950s, black characters in mainstream films were largely confined to roles as maids, butlers, and comic relief. Even when black actors achieved prominence, like the groundbreaking Hattie McDaniel winning an Oscar for Gone with the Wind, they were still playing roles that reinforced racist stereotypes. The 1960s brought seismic changes to American society. The civil rights movement was reshaping the nation's consciousness. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. offered different visions of black empowerment. The Black Panthers emerged as a powerful symbol of resistance. Yet Hollywood remained stuck in the past. By 1969, the disconnect between Hollywood and reality had become catastrophic. The numbers tell the story. MGM's losses reached $35 million, equivalent to over $260 million today. Paramount was down $29 million. 20th Century Fox, reeling from expensive musicals like Dr. Dolittle, lost an astounding $77 million. Theater attendance had plummeted from 44 million weekly viewers in 1965 to just 16 million in 1970. The average age of moviegoers was rising. Young people, especially in urban areas, saw Hollywood as increasingly irrelevant to their lives. But in America's inner cities, something different was happening. Theaters like the Howard in Washington, D.C., the Grand Circus in Detroit, and the Baldwin in Los Angeles were still drawing crowds. These predominantly black audiences weren't coming for Hollywood's latest offerings. They were coming for alternative programming, including militant documentaries and independent black films. Enter Melvin Van Peebles. A former Air Force pilot who had spent time in France, Van Peebles had already directed one Hollywood film, Watermelon Man, for Columbia Pictures. But he had bigger dreams, dreams that no studio would touch. In 1971, Van Peebles took an unprecedented risk. Unable to secure studio backing, he borrowed $500,000 from Bill Cosby, mortgaged his house, and began production on Sweetback's Baadasssss song. The production was guerrilla filmmaking at its most extreme. Van Peebles didn't just direct, he wrote, produced, edited, and starred in the film. To save money, he performed his own stunts, including a motorcycle scene that left him injured. He even contracted gonorrhea while filming an unsimulated sex scene, later successfully applying to the Directors Guild for workers' compensation. The film's plot was revolutionary, a black male protagonist who fights corrupt white authorities and wins. The tagline was even more provocative, rated X by an all-white jury. Most mainstream theaters refused to show it, but word spread through the black community like wildfire. In Detroit, lines stretched around the block. In Atlanta, theaters added midnight showings to meet demand. The film ultimately grossed $15.2 million, nearly 30 times its budget. Hollywood couldn't ignore numbers like these. MGM, already on the brink of bankruptcy, took a calculated risk. They greenlit Shaft, directed by the renowned photographer Gordon Parks Sr., with a budget of $1.2 million. Richard Roundtree, a former model with little acting experience, was paid just $13,000 to play John Shaft. But his portrayal of a tough, sophisticated black private detective captured the public's imagination. The film grossed $13 million domestically, and Isaac Hayes' iconic soundtrack won an Oscar, making him the first black composer to receive the honor. Gordon Parks Jr. followed his father's success with Superfly in 1972. Ron O'Neal starred as Priest, a cocaine dealer seeking one last score before leaving the criminal life. Made for $500,000, the film earned $11 million. Curtis Mayfield's soundtrack became a phenomenon in its own right, selling over 2 million copies and influencing music for decades to come. But Perhaps the most revolutionary development was the emergence of black female action stars. Pam Grier, who had started as a receptionist at American International Pictures, became the queen of the genre. Her films Coffee and Foxy Brown presented a new archetype, a powerful black woman seeking justice on her own terms. Tamara Dobson's Cleopatra Jones took the concept global, featuring a sophisticated CIA agent fighting drug traffickers around the world. These weren't just action movies. They were statements about black female empowerment that preceded mainstream Hollywood's acceptance of female action heroes by decades. Behind the scenes, a new generation of black talent was emerging. Directors like Ossie Davis brought sophistication to the genre with films like Cotton Comes to Harlem. William Crane's Blackula proved that black filmmakers could successfully reimagine traditionally white genres. The financial impact was staggering. By 1973, Warner Brothers had gone from a $32 million loss to a $32 million profit. Universal posted profits of $43 million. Blaxploitation films, typically produced for under $1 million, were generating returns of 400% to 2,000%. But success bred controversy. The term Blaxploitation itself was coined by Junius Griffin of the NAACP, who worried these films reinforced negative stereotypes. Critics argued that the focus on crime, drugs, and violence played into white audiences' worst fears about black communities. Yet others saw the genre as revolutionary. These films featured black heroes and heroines who fought corruption, sought justice, and usually won. For the first time, black characters weren't sidekicks or comic relief. They were the stars, the decision makers, the agents of their own destiny. Jim Brown, the NFL legend turned actor, appeared in over 30 films and helped establish a new model of black male stardom. Fred Williamson transitioned from actor to director-producer, creating his own production company to maintain creative control. The soundtracks became cultural touchstones. Earth, Wind and Fire, Curtis Mayfield, James Brown, and Isaac Hayes created music that transcended the films themselves. The marriage of funk, soul, and cinema would influence filmmakers for generations. By the mid-1970s, the genre began to fade as studios returned to big-budget blockbusters. But its impact would prove permanent. Without blaxploitation, there might never have been a Spike Lee or an Ava DuVernay. The genre proved that black stories weren't just marketable. They were essential. Look at today's cinema landscape. Ryan Coogler's Black Panther grossing $1.3 billion worldwide. Jordan Peele's Get Out and Us reinventing horror. Barry Jenkins winning Best Picture for Moonlight. These successes stand on the foundation built by blaxploitation pioneers. The influence appears in unexpected places. The Fast and Furious franchise's diverse casting and urban aesthetic. Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown, an explicit homage to Pam Grier. Even Marvel's Luke Cage carries echoes of the genre's street-level heroes. More importantly, the lessons of blaxploitation continue to resonate. When Crazy Rich Asians grosses $238 million worldwide, it validates what Gordon Parks knew. Representation isn't just morally right, it's good business. When Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse wins an Oscar with Miles Morales as its hero, it builds on a foundation laid 50 years ago. Films like Do the Right Thing, Boys in the Hood, Moonlight, and If Beale Street Could Talk might never have found financing without the precedent set by blaxploitation. The genre proved that black stories weren't niche, they were necessary. In saving Hollywood, black Americans did more than rescue studios from bankruptcy. They forced an industry to confront its prejudices. They expanded the possibilities of American cinema. They showed that the path to prosperity lay through diversity. Today's black directors, from Ava DuVernay to Ryan Coogler, from Barry Jenkins to Regina King, inherit a powerful legacy. They work in an industry transformed by their predecessors' courage and creativity. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all. When Hollywood embraces authentic black voices, everyone wins. The salvation of an industry became the transformation of American culture itself. The Dream Factory learned to dream in new colors, and cinema was forever changed.